OpenAI has been in the news yet again. I feel like it's not like we say this every week, but sometimes it's positive, sometimes it's negative. And I feel like the press really gives OpenAI a pass. I think you and I do too, Jaden, if I'm being totally fair, just because we have such respect for the product and the product has been great. But a couple of things to note that I wanted to get your take on, Jaden. First was sort of some staff shakeup at the senior level. The other thing is this AI detector story, which I think is really, really interesting. I want to dive into. But just at the first, what we are seeing is that, and I'm wondering if they kind of put all these, I don't know, leaving sort of events together to try to minimize news. I wouldn't be surprised. But 3 big leaders are either leaving or taking a leave of absence. Greg Brockman, president and founder, taking a leave. And then there's a couple other, John Schulman, Peter Deng. And this sort of like fits in with some other people recently leaving. Anyway, Jaden, have you seen the shakeup thing? Because to me, this is kind of an interesting story.
Yeah, I think this is super fascinating right now. You know, we see with Peter, that was essentially a designer, but like a big designer worked over at Uber and Google and a bunch of other places. So it was kind of like, that was like kind of the first thing. And it was like, okay, cool. Like big designer, OpenAI leaving. That's okay. We'll survive. Then I think the biggest like drama was having the founder that straight up went over to Anthropic. And that was, that's straight up a co-founder, one of the original 11 co-founders moving over to Anthropic. Now, if you listen to kind of like what he said about it and what OpenAI said about it, they're like, it's not because like he doesn't like OpenAI or that we're doing anything bad. He just thought he's like, I just thought it would be good for my career growth. Like, and like, he has no problems with OpenAI. And so like, I kind of get that, but then at the same time, it's kind of like, but is it really that? Or are you just trying to like not, sabotage or destroy the company or be liable for it or get sued by them if you say something bad? Like, at what level of you leaving the company you co-founded as one of the original 11 co-founders to go to the number one competitor? Like, what part of that is just, your career development versus like, dude, you're in like one of the most important, impactful, and we're the co-founder of one of the most important, impactful AI companies, period, reshaping an entire industry. Like, yep. I don't know. I just think that's really, really interesting.
No, I think so. Listen, I think so too. And you're right. So this part of this tweet or this X post, I don't know, you can't even call it anymore. So it was John Schulman, and this guy was the co-founder and key architect, or one of the key architects, obviously, of ChatGPT. But here's the funny thing. He left, as you said, to go to Anthropic. And I just want to read this because there's a disconnect here, right? It says, this choice, his leaving, this is what he put on X, stems from my desire to deepen my focus on AI alignment. I've decided to pursue this goal at Anthropic, where I believe I can gain new perspectives and do research along people deeply engaged with the topics I'm most interested in. To be clear, I'm not leaving due to a lack of support for alignment research at OpenAI. On the contrary, company leaders have been very committed to investing in this area. Okay, this is why I think this is really worth talking about. Guys, nobody just leaves to go to the competitor. Do you know what I mean? Like in this kind of, especially in this kind of field. Yes, somebody might jump from, McKinsey to Bain or something like that for more money or something like that. But this is somebody that probably doesn't have, it's probably not a money move for somebody. Also, it stands out because this is what other people have done too. People have gone from OpenAI over to Anthropic, including the founders of Anthropic left and said over and over again, listen, OpenAI is not paying enough attention to safety. That's what we want to do at Anthropic. Anthropic takes this very seriously. They have a whole different kind of model, constitutional AI. They really, really focus on safety. By the way, they also have one of the top models right now. So that's going to be interesting to watch. But I think that when you see this, it's not that I doubt what he's saying. I just feel like there's something here when everybody's sort of flowing to Anthropic. If OpenAI really is doing this work, why wouldn't they say this is a fierce rival, guys? This is a very, very fierce rival. And so to see him going over there and to see Greg Brockman taking a leave of absence, he's the president, and as you said, Peter Deng, who was a designer guy. But this is also in the wake of Ilya Sutskever, who left over safety concerns. I mean, supposedly, anyway, that goes back to the whole Sam Altman ousting thing. And then Jan Leakey, I think his name was, a former head of super alignment. He was not so kind. When he left OpenAI, I remember that one that was that, Jaden. It was a couple months ago or something, right? Where he came out and he's like, they're not working on super alignment. They're not doing a good job. Anyway, it tells a story. I just don't know what the story is.
So the story that I think it tells in regards specifically to Greg Brockman. So I mean, yeah, you're right. And I won't like whatever. Is OpenAI doing good or bad, or is it just growing pains in a startup that was very small? And like, so here's a very common thing for startups. And I've talked to a lot of people about this. It's like you get started with a startup, and it's very fun when it's small because like everything you do makes an impact. You're very pivotal to a lot of things, and as the company grows, eventually you kind of become more of a manager and more visionary, and you kind of get stepped back essentially from the day-to-day stuff. And a lot of people don't like that. They don't like this shift in organization, and they just don't feel like it's a good fit for them. And to be fair, a lot of people, you know, we often hear of like Mark Zuckerberg, who was like, he was like started in college, ran it till it's like one of the biggest companies in the world, Facebook or Meta, but like he's a very rare case. Most people don't feel good at or don't like run a company starting from small and scale it all the way up, and they're the head of the company all the way. It's just not very common. It's not a very common skill set. Most people say they don't like it. They're like, oh, I like small startups, or I like big startups, or I like whatever, this type of company or that type of company, and it's very rare for someone to be able to do it. So anyways, there's a story that perhaps that could have played a role into it, although Anthropic is pretty much the same size as OpenAI, so hopping over there, I don't think is, maybe it says that. The thing that I also think is very interesting, though, is the Greg Brockman thing. So Greg Brockman, he's been working for 9 years on OpenAI, and all of a sudden he's like, hey, look, I'm going to take a leave of absence till the end of the year. Two thoughts on this. My first is that potentially he's just trying to like buffer the blow of him actually leaving the company and saying, oh, it's leave of absence. And at the end of the year, he's like, okay, I'm not coming back. And maybe he just said that because everyone else is leaving and he doesn't want it to like seem like the whole thing's being abandoned. Okay, here's my conspiracy theory, my exciting theory on this.
What is here for?
That OpenAI is on the precipice of a massive breakthrough, and all they need to do is wait 6 more months for their model to be finished training. They've got it all figured out. They got it lined up. They got all the compute. They're rocking and rolling, and they're just sitting back waiting for this ginormous GPT-5 to finish cooking. And Brockman's like, look, my life is going to be so crazy by the time this thing is ready. I don't know when I'm going to get out next. So while this thing is training for the last 6 months, I'm going to take a step back and just relax before the insanity. That is my hopeful wish of what is happening with Greg Brockman, and not that he's just kind of buffering that he's going to bounce out and maybe they're not onto something. But anyway, that's my conspiracy theory that I
love this. I love this, Jaden. And I love this idea that, all they have to do is red team it now. I mean, maybe imagine the thought of them sitting on GPT-5 for so long, even though I don't know, with all the multimodal stuff, I'm starting to wonder, like, are they sneaking out a little bit of GPT-5 here and there and stuff? I know it's not, but yeah, I mean, it could be. I hope Greg Brockman comes back and all that kind of stuff. I don't know what's going to happen with that. But again, it just does. It's one of those things where it's like, maybe it's nothing, maybe it's something. Super alignment, which just means getting the AI in line with human values, especially in preparation for what they call AGI, artificial general intelligence, when these things can control themselves, is huge. The other thing that came out of OpenAI, though, Jaden, and I think we were talking about it on Slack just now, just as we were coming on, with that TechCrunch article, I think it was, which is that OpenAI apparently, this is the news that came out just a couple of days ago, apparently has an AI text detector that it doesn't want to release. And that to me is absolutely fascinating, because forever, we've kind of made the point that there is no AI detector. We said it, Ethan Malik has said it, everybody kind of says it doesn't work because all it takes is just a few tweaks and it's impossible to see AI writing. Even though if you see somebody who's written with AI, you kind of know it has like rocket ship emojis. It's trying to delve into things and harness the power of AI and unleash the power of AI at the same time. Doesn't make any sense. But the interesting thing to me is not just about that they have it, but why wouldn't they release it? And so apparently, like, some of the key points around, TechCrunch talks about this, some other places too. Apparently, there's this watermarking technique that can detect generated text with 99.9% accuracy. It also just it subtly alters how ChatGPT selects words or something like that. But the more interesting point to me is, because this is AI applied. This is how we interact with GPT, not just that it exists. 30% of surveyed ChatGPT users said they would use the tool less if watermarking was implemented, which means it could impact the base, the user base, and the revenue. So, Jaden, this is by the way, it could also be circumvented and all that kind of stuff, all that kind of stuff. But that to me is so interesting. We are now a small subset of the human race here is starting to rely on AI for writing things. It really is still small, guys. But Jaden, thoughts on this? The thought that people would be like, wait a minute, you've just given me this amazing tool and now there's a stigma attached to it, so I shouldn't use it. So OpenAI, don't release it. I don't know. Where do you fall on that? I'm dying to know.
Yeah, no, I think 100% that's the issue. Well, two things. The first was that like early on, it probably wasn't as sophisticated. They came out with the AI text detector. It had a very high likelihood of being wrong back then, and so they actually shut it down.
Remember.
Yeah, and so they probably spent a lot of time and money like getting one that makes it right, and the way they make it right is they essentially have an algorithm that inserts certain words and certain letters and certain things in there that when you're reading it, it just seems like a ChatGPT response, but it now knows if you run it back through their algorithm, it can detect when text was written by ChatGPT. And it's not just like, it said something funny like ChatGPT normally does. It's like the way the words are organized, and there's like just different things that they put like a little algorithm. Okay, so the thing that I think is very true that you mentioned is like a lot of people are using this to save themselves time. They're like, yeah, I automated this, or I saved my time doing this. And if everything could be detected, then all of a sudden it feels very much like it's like the magic show, like how the magician does their trick. And all of a sudden, like, it cheapens things. Like when I get an email from someone and it seems like very legit, and I'm like, okay, awesome, great, moving on. Like if I had a plugin on Chrome, because likely that's what this is going to turn into, right? You just get a Google Chrome plugin that's going to have an embed to an API to this thing, and it's going to mark in red everything on my screen that was AI generated. Like if I go to a website and there's a little blurb of text that I wouldn't normally look at or read, and all of a sudden it's highlighted in red like it's AI generated, it's just going to make everything feel cheap. And so if that happens, then why would the company use ChatGPT's text to put on their website? Because they don't want that stigma. And then they're going to go to something like Anthropic or some other AI models, or there's going to be tools to try to obfuscate it. But if you're using a tool to obfuscate it, why would you even use ChatGPT to begin with? Why wouldn't you just use something different that automatically spits out text that people can't detect it? So like it really feels like it's like counterintuitive to their product. But like you can see they're kind of maybe trying to appease like regulators, or trying to appease like people saying, oh, it's for like safety reasons and transparency reasons.
Education.
But the actual user and businesses using this, I highly doubt any of them actually want it. You said 30% don't want it. I bet it's even more, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me.
Yeah, I think one of the big things is just like OpenAI has gotten, and I know because I'm at NYU, so just they're constantly getting this from educators, all around schools being like, hey, come on, you're killing us here. Like we've taken all the proxies for grading every way that we've ever graded and taught, and you've tossed it in the trash can without giving us an alternative. And I think that they're really sensitive to that because students and teachers are going to be colossal users of this. It's going to be huge. And I think that that's one of the big things that they have to look at. So I don't know where I fall on this. It's good to know that they have it. I like the technology. But come on, OpenAI, we got to think through this thing. But all right, listen, that's all for today's AI Applied. Again, we could kind of keep on talking about this. Listen, if you appreciate the show, even if you heard one thing over the last month accidentally that you're like, you know what, Jaden and Connor, they're good fellas. They have kids. They're just like sort of like decent human beings. Here's what you can do, because I know you're dying to like send us flowers, send us gifts. No, we do not want that. We don't want anything. Here's all we want. If you can just take a second and just go and leave a rating and review, if you haven't done it already, honestly, I know it's a pain. I hate doing it too. I'm just telling you, it would mean the world to us. We'll read every single one. It would mean a lot. Thank you for listening, for spending your time with us, and we hope you have an amazing rest of the day.